I'm Chad Johnson, CEO,
And I'm Ben Johnson, Chief Innovation Officer here at Grain Weevil.
and we're here at our Grain Weevil headquarters where we build robots that does the work that no human should.
Grain Weevil is a grain bin safety and management robot.
Grain Weevil stemmed out of a challenge from a local farmer out of Giltner, Nebraska, who actually had seen a robot that Ben had started working on. And he said, man, if you could build that thing, build me one to keep me out of a grain bin. And so that's where the idea got started. We took that idea and ran with it and started building prototypes to get in there and see if we could actually make a difference inside of that grain bin. When grain is stored inside of grain bins for any extended period of time, the grain starts to deteriorate. And there's certain factors that make that go faster, like temperature and moisture. So farmers can get in the grain bin to actually keep that from happening by leveling and taking care of their grain. Or if they haven't done that and they form a crust, crusts and bridges can form. And that's when a person may go inside of a grain bin, try to break up those crusts and bridges, and maybe that collapses. Or maybe someone doesn't know they're in the grain bin and turns on the extraction augers. And as many as 25 people a year die being entrapped inside of grain bins. So that was the mission, was to build a robot so it could do all the work that a human could do inside of the grain bin.
So that robot initially was a side project, one-off for a company in Chicago, actually, another startup. And it was a pretty simple robot that would follow someone in a warehouse and take video and things like that. Very much so a prototype, just something fun to do for a little extra experience outside of school. And that we showed off quite a bit to some friends and family, and it inspired the idea in our friend Zach Honeycutt, who has a bunch of grain bins and has to manage those and work those regularly to keep the quality of his grain. And the idea came to him and said, hey, you should build a robot to keep me and my kids out of the grain bin, out of that nasty environment.
So Grain Weevil is our first startup, and so what had happened, we did start the project as an educational program to try to gain experience and for my previous job as well to teach kids workforce skills through innovation. But as we started to develop the prototypes, one of our videos went viral, and we got a whole lot of feedback from farmers that this could be a very useful device. Since we had never done a startup before, we went through the Combine, which is an incubator program there in Lincoln that helps ag tech startups develop their business plan and create the process. We did self-fund quite a few of the robot developments while the kids were still in college. But since then, we have done 2 funding rounds where we have gotten investors. We also have a little over $2 million in grants that we've received through different SBIR grants and local grants through the Department of Economic Development here in the state of Nebraska. So it's been very, very useful to be able to get the funds necessary to build something. We've been working on this. The first prototype worked in March of 2020, and we're just getting ready to release our first full batch of sales. And that's actually pretty fast for a robot development. So it takes a long time to develop something that can do the work. The environment's a rough environment for electronics. It takes a lot of power. It's just really difficult. And so getting those fundings and the grants have really helped us build our team here in La Vista. And we got 11 full-time staff, and it's been really good to get us to this point. And now we're excited to actually get the robots out to start making a difference.
At UNO, I studied electrical engineering with a focus in electronics, and that started because in high school and middle school I was learning about robotics, starting to build my own. I even started designing circuit boards early in high school for those robots, and so I was pretty passionate about using that technology, and so I was looking for a program to support that and build around what I already knew about electronics. And so it was a great time. It was tough at times working on the robot on the kitchen table in the dorm and homework and balancing that. But thankfully, I was able to make it all the way through and graduate. So very, very pleased to accomplish that, yeah.
If you're a nerd, every dad's dream is to build robots with his kid. and also very fun that my wife also works for us, and so it is a family business, and I look at it as a really good opportunity for us as a father-son duo to do something that impacts the families that we're trying to reach. You know, most farm families are multi-generational, and it just means a lot more to us because of who our primary clientele is, that family base. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
From my perspective, it kind of feels like I've been doing exactly this for most of my life.
Mhm.
It's, you know, I've always been into the robotics and the projects and building stuff, and that, it comes from him. So we've been doing it together since sixth grade on robots. And so it just was a natural progression. Had a little break time in college when I was trying to stay away, but he couldn't, I couldn't stay away for too long, had to come back and build a robot. So that's how this came to be. So recently, the most difficult thing we've been working on is certification of the robot. Um, we're going to be the first robot to go in a grain dust explosion environment and be certified to operate in there. And so we're kind of having to pave our path through that. We have consultants and we're working directly with UL and the certifying bodies to help us create that path. But at the end of the day, we kind of are um, setting the standard for robotics in an environment like this. So it's been a big challenge, but we've kind of got a great roadmap now to get through that.
You know, I think probably the most surprising thing for us is the amount of attention that our little robot can get. You know, the first duct tape together 3D printed prototype went viral. So we've had to rely on our patent lawyer to make sure that everything that we videotape's covered, so we don't release a video that goes viral and then we lose the rights to those patents. So that's been really fun. So we're sitting a little over 300 million views on social media. So I think that's probably the one thing that surprises me most is how much attention it gets. One, because it's cool to watch, but two, it's doing something that most people that understand grain and other materials, they just get what it does. Omaha's been great for us. Obviously, you know, our ties for rural community and actually innovating out in a very small town was very useful as we got started. Our whole entire neighborhood in Aurora was just loaded with opportunities, and that was great. But as we started to grow and migrate to Omaha, just a really good place. One, because we're within about a 5 hour drive from 80% of the stored grain in the United States. Within a day's drive for sure, we can get to most of the stored grain in the United States. So we're right in the middle of where the bulk amount of storage is. So that really helps. It helps us also to be from the Midwest when we're out talking to our primary clients. And that's been really big. But I mean, for me, it's our team. It's being able to find people in Omaha that have unbelievable skills and this unique talent set that we can pull together. You know, we have 11 of us. Two don't live here in Omaha, but the rest of us do. And I would put my robot team up against anyone else in the world. That includes Boston Dynamics. That he may not think that, but as the CEO, I see how we solve problems and the challenges and just the creativity. We solve problems in ways that a lot of these big robot companies can't, and that's really powerful. I think the other big cool part about our story is that the parts and the pieces, we try to get as many of those here as well. So our chargers come out of Lincoln and our winches come out of Hastings, and we're getting injection molding done here in Omaha. And so it's just this really cool story of how we're using the Nebraska ecosystem for manufacturing to build our robots here as well. So that's a neat part of this whole story and how we've grown and gotten to where we are because of the ecosystem and the help and the right employees coming to the door at the right amount of time. And it's just been a really cool part of this story. One of the cool parts about Omaha is like it's a really neat, unique space to build startups. We have a really good ecosystem. As a matter of fact, we just won on LinkedIn the Midwest Startups Challenge. And so it just goes to show that there's, obviously that's a meaningless award because it's just people voting, but it shows a lot about the passion, the ecosystem. We've got, agricultural startups. We got the insurance startups and financial startups and all these different logistic startups. There's this really unique core of people, and there's a lot of kind of fundamental organizations here that bring us together. We in a Million Cups meetings on Wednesday mornings and all these things that are really cool. We've got funders like Grit Road, and they're very passionate about helping Midwest ag tech companies be successful. So there's this really cool ecosystem built here in Omaha that helps groups like us and startups, and I think that's really important to know that there are resources out there for anybody that wants to get started. So people ask me all the time for advice on how to get started, and my advice to everyone is just build something, right? It's if you have an idea, try to build it yourself. You could go out and spend a lot of money on prototypes and getting things kind of the cart before the horse. But there are resources here in Nebraska at different places where you can go find help just to, like I said, duct tape and 3D print is a great way to start if you're building an actual product. If you're doing software, there's so many cool, unique ways to just get something. Get your proof of concept done first, and then you can start to figure out how to polish it and get it ready. Our history wall that's up on the wall here shows a lot of cheap, innovative iterations between this product to the next product to the next. And it took us a while to go from functional prototype to operational product ready for a customer. Um, but there was a lot of work that you have to do before you're ready to commit to that. So my advice, just start building. That's the best way to get a startup going. So I think this whole project started as a mission. It's that idea that the dangerous work that we're replacing, and I think that our slogan that we have now is doing the work that no human should. We used to really focus just on the grain bin, but as we've started to grow, we're noticing more and more granular materials that need to be managed and handled, from industrial materials to mining. It doesn't matter if it's a granular material, it needs to be handled safely. And so our robot, with that focus of safety, um, every 2 weeks someone dies in the United States being entrapped in the grain. And so that's like a real driver for us. But it's also, that's the foundation for our mission, but the idea of how big this can be, the amount of opportunities that we have, everything from sugar to coffee to pistachios to fertilizer. It's not just grain. So I think that's part of my excitement is that we have a mission, but we also have a really cool opportunity to build something really big, and that keeps me motivated.
What keeps me driven is our slogan, doing the work that no human should. And I think this first robot, our Grain Weevil robot that we have, is a perfect example of that mission, trying to do the work inside of grain bins, no boots in the grain. And I think we can zoom that out to all sorts of different opportunities. I'm very passionate about purpose-built robots that do work that is unsafe, not fun for workers. That manual labor that nobody wants to do. We can build specific robots to take care of those challenges and free those people to do other more interesting, more fulfilling jobs.